pay the rest, and they're stuck there, and they owe the money to the university, so they're suing him. So nobody takes those fundamentals anymore. I saw The Last Temptation of Christ a couple of nights ago in Detroit, and the pickets are really part of the film. I thought it was a great PR stunt when Universal sent out prints of the film before it was released to some of the top fundies. Fundies is short for fundamentalists in California. I don't know if that slang has caught on yet. They sent prints out, and the idea, they claimed they wanted to get approval before they released the film. Of course, they didn't get approval, and they released the film anyway. What it was a publicity gimmick. They said, we get all these idiots marching around with signs. It's at least $15 million worth of free publicity. And, of course, the idiots fell right into the trap, and they're marching around with their signs. And I think it's a good idea because it's a very arty, moody, Bergman-esque type film. Only intellectuals would go to see it, probably, without this publicity. Now everybody wants to go see it to find out what all the shouting is about. But the pickets add to the film artistically, too. I think Scorsese has reached a new level of film art in terms of turning a film into a happening. To get into the film, you got to pass all these crazy pickets waving their crosses and yelling out Satan out and all sorts of goofy things like that. And then you get into the film and you see they're inside the film as well as outside it. You see the same types inside the film. And they're saying to Jesus, you're not our kind of God. You're too goofy for us. Our God isn't like you. Our God makes sense. You don't make sense at all. And then they crucify him. And you realize this Jesus in this film is the kind of guy that does get crucified. If he was alive today, he'd be a card-carrying member of the American Civil Liberties Union. Everybody would despise him. And those people outside there going around with their signs saying, he's not our God. We don't like him at all. He's Satan. And they're the same people inside the film who are crucifying him. So they make the film multi-dimensional. It's not just an artwork. It's an artwork and a sociology lesson at the same time. In the film, you see the kind of people who killed Christ, and outside the film, you see the kind of people who killed Christ. Only they've got a little plastic doll Christ they call the real Christ, and when the real Christ appears on the screen, they want to crucify him again. And Scorsese couldn't make that point so strongly and artistically without getting these people to cooperate. Now that's what I consider a masterstroke of art, incorporating the opposition into the artwork so they serve as an illustration of the artwork. Those commercials are really a trip. I turned on the television. I came back to this country 8 months ago. I got myself a television set so I could be a good American. And I turned it on, and I start seeing these things. A guy trying to do his income tax and going off his head, and his wife brings him in a drug and says, here, try this. And he takes the drug, and he's no longer terrified. He's no longer anxious. He's not afraid the IRS is going to seize his car or his yacht or anything. It's some damn stuff called Advil, I think. And then there's a housewife whose kids are tearing the place apart, and she's going wacko. And another housewife comes over and says, here, try this, and gives her another drug. And she's, oh, wow, she's got the whole house clean, and she looks like she just had an orgasm, and she's really out of her skull with ecstasy and euphoria. I forget what that, I think it was Anton. I don't know. And then there's somebody who opens the door, and there are these monsters lurking out there shaped like great big letters, and they're called allergy. The guy closes the door and he can't go out. Somebody says, don't be afraid of the monsters out there. Try this, and gives him another drug, and he feels better. All you get is one drug after another, and then on comes this thing. This is your brain. This is your brain on drugs. What the hell are they trying to tell us? Don't believe our other commercials?
Which shows more advertising, before or after?
Have the Christian Scientists got their own, are they doing their own advertising now? Is there anybody in the country who isn't using drugs? Everybody is taking drugs for high blood pressure, or for insomnia, or for diabetes, or for one thing or another, for back strain. And the only ones who aren't taking drugs are the Christian Scientists. And so that commercial must be the Christian Scientist attempt to infiltrate the world of television, which is chiefly in a drug-pushing business. Well, most of the commercials are saying our drug is better than anybody else's drug, just like the dealers on the street. You know, Advil is better than Anison. Just like the guys come up to you and say, look, this is real Colombian. This is much better than that crap from Mendocino. And it's all the same stuff, except television stops every couple of minutes and somebody says, don't take it. And I think they're a little bit skitsed out there. But the brain, what it comes down to is they want you to take lots of drugs for your aches and pains, and they create a society which is guaranteed to produce enough body tension that everybody has aches and pains. This is the only country left in the world that I know of, as there are probably some in the third world. This is the only country left in the civilized world where you can be thrown out of your job with 2 weeks' salary, or with nothing, or with no salary at all. Everywhere in Europe, where I lived for 6 years, everywhere in the civilized world, if they try to fire somebody, there's got to be prolonged hearings between the management, the union, and the government, and nobody gets fired without at least a year's severance pay to tide them over. That's regarded as normal behavior in the civilized world. They don't believe in throwing people out on the streets and letting them wander around begging like in India. This is the only industrialized country that looks like a third world country. You get off the plane and the first thing you see is the hordes of the homeless wandering around. You say, "Hey, pilot, I wanted to go to the United States, not India. What did you do to me?" Well, what they did was 8 years of Ronald Reagan. This is the only country where you don't have a national health plan. This is the only country where people are more afraid of the doctor's bill than they're afraid of getting sick. In other parts of the world, people say, "Gee, I hope I don't have something serious because it take a while to get cured, but thank God I got the coverage." Here they say, "It doesn't matter about the disease. Well, how much are they going to take after I get cured? I'm going to lose the house, I'll lose the car. They'll take this, they'll take that. Will I have anything left? How many years am I going to be in debt? Am I going to have to declare bankruptcy?" There's no other country that puts its citizens under so much tension and anxiety continually. But that's good for us. It builds character. That's what Ronald Reagan says. Well, what it does is increase the sales of drugs. Everybody's strung out on something or other because they're trying to deal with the anxiety of living in a savage, barbaric system like this. Over in Europe, where you can't get fired, as I said, without prolonged hearings, and you get at least a year's severance pay, where you know your medical expenses are going to be covered, people don't have these wild, traumatic types of anxieties, and you don't find them wandering around with these weird, psychotic cult systems like Peter Beater, who claims the KGB has been killing all of our politicians and replacing them with robots for the last 20 years. Yeah, Peter Beater has a lot of followers. He claims the attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan wasn't an attempt at all. They actually killed him and they put a robot in his place. And if you stop to think about it, how would we tell the difference? Well, if your name was Peter Beater, you'd be pretty weird by the time you get out of high school. Then there's Lyndon LaRouche. Lyndon LaRouche claims that Queen Elizabeth is the head of the international drug business. Queen Elizabeth personally sent Alan Watts and Aldous Huxley to this country to corrupt us. And that's a scene I love to visualize. You know, the Queen of England is one of the 8 richest people in the world. The English people pay her all this money to be dull. The English have this thing, they don't want to give up monarchy. They got a sentimental attachment to it, but they don't want a monarch who has any character or personality whatsoever. So they've been paying this German family, whose name was originally Battenberg, and they changed it to Mountbatten to sound more English. They're paying this German family to sit up there looking dull, and to come out occasionally and make dull speeches, and to wear dull clothes, and to be as dull as possible so they can have a monarch and not worry about it. Because the lively monarchs they had made all sorts of trouble for them. And the idea of this dull woman calling in the 2 chief philosophers in England and saying, "I've got an assignment for you. I need more money. I'm going into the drug business. You go over and sell the drugs to the Americans." And LaRouche really believes this. I've read his autobiography. You know what it's called? The Power of Reason. It's fascinating how all paranoids have this great faith in reason, especially their own reason. LaRouche claims I am an apologist for the Bavarian Illuminati. He says the L5 Society is a Gnostic right-wing conspiracy founded by the Illuminati apologist Robert Anton Wilson and the drug-crazed madman Timothy Leary. Actually, the L5 Society was founded by Keith Henson, but LaRouche doesn't bother with facts or details. I woke up this morning with a runny nose and bleary eyes. And I've taken 3 grams of C, which generally works to cure that situation, and I'm feeling a lot better. I also use the Endomax, which is the machine in this bag here, which Joe will be demonstrating shortly. The Endomax is a very interesting machine that stimulates the hypothalamus, which is a little walnut-shaped part of the brain in the back, right around there, between the mastoid bones of the ear. The hypothalamus is one of the most taboo parts of that taboo organ, the brain. You can do anything you want, as I was saying, with your genitalia these days, and nobody will object but the crazy fundies, and nobody pays attention to them anymore. As a matter of fact, I go to the South a lot lately. I'm getting a lot of invitations to speak in the South. And the main sport with the younger set in the South, when they can't think of anything else to do, they go to the nearest motel and they yell, "Vice Squad, Vice Squad," and then they run around the back and count the evangelists coming out the windows of their drawers. Nobody takes those people seriously anymore, but we have this big taboo on the brain. Don't do anything with your brain that might give you any pleasure. Don't have fun with your brain. The brain has only 2 functions, worry and depression. That proves you're a good, well-adjusted citizen. If you do anything to get high or more intelligent or to expand your consciousness, that is a crime against civilization. And George Bush wants to put you in jail for life. Fuck you, George Bush! I have done a lot of time in the last 20 years speculating on the evolutionary function of stupidity. Stupidity has been around so long, it must be serving some function in evolution. And so I've been asking myself, what is the evolutionary function of stupidity? And I have decided stupidity exists and is perpetuated because it forces the intelligent to get even more intelligent. If it wasn't for the continuous inertia of the vast stupid majority, the intelligent would coast along in second gear. Stupidity forces the intelligent to move into first gear and make extra efforts in order to survive. As Voltaire said, you cannot get any concept of human stupidity until you've mastered the mathematical meaning of infinity. The extent of stupidity on this planet is absolutely incalculable. One way of approaching it mathematically is through averages. As J.R. Bob Dobbs says, praise Bob. As J.R. Bob Dobbs says, you all know how dumb the average guy is. Well, mathematically, by definition, half of them are even dumber than that. Look at Rajneesh. He was just a simple boy growing up in India, and he read in the newspaper that and found enough seekers to pay to hear him do his shtick that he was able to buy a Rolls Royce. And Rajneesh says, wow, there's a lot of seekers in the Western world. Then he realized there's a seeker born every minute. And so Rajneesh came over here, and he started his own cult based on the traditional brainwashing techniques: isolation from the major society, repetition, weird diet, and so on. And pretty soon he had 16 Rolls Royces. Then he had 32 Rolls Royces. Then he had 64 Rolls Royces. It was starting to look like an exponential function. He got up to 93 Rolls Royces before the whole shithouse collapsed on him. But 93 Rolls Royces is pretty good. How many of you have got 93 Rolls Royces? You see, don't put down Rajneesh. He was acting in accord with natural law. Natural law is, as W.C. Fields said, it is a sin against natural law to leave a seeker in full possession of their assets. And you know what Rajneesh did every time he got a new Rolls Royce? He'd take a photo of it, and he'd write on the back, "fuck you," and he'd send it to Krishnamurti. who only had one Rolls Royce. Anyway, the hypothalamus is between the mastoids in the back of the brain. It's a very old organ. It goes back to the birth of the brain as a distinct organ and apart from the rest of the nervous system very early in evolution. The hypothalamus controls the neuropeptide system. The neuropeptides are a very interesting class of drugs. Oops, I said the D word again. They're a very interesting set of chemicals. The brain has a supply of amino acids which it puts together according to certain instructions it receives from the hypothalamus. And it puts them together into various compounds which are known as neuropeptides. Now, one of the neuropeptides that was first discovered and that we know the most about is adrenaline. If you get a terrible shock or a scare, the hypothalamus sends adrenaline all over your body. And we all know what an adrenaline rush feels like. There are people who get rich out of producing artificial adrenaline rushes. In Hollywood, they make movies that give you adrenaline rushes. Some people seem to be addicted to adrenaline, their own adrenaline. You can get addicted to your own neuropeptides, apparently. And some people go see all these slasher movies, ketchup epics, or whatever you call them. I can't imagine why anybody would want to see movies like that, but they have their audience. People go see them over and over again just to get these adrenaline rushes. And directors have learned all sorts of subtle techniques to bring the knife on the screen at the most unexpected moments so the whole audience gets an adrenaline rush. Adrenaline prepares the body for fight or flight. You're getting ready to stand and fight or to run away. Either way, you're getting extra energy because you need extra energy when you're scared, when something seems to be threatening you. If you get enough adrenaline, the hypothalamus starts to feel there's something wrong. Adrenaline isn't handling the case, so it starts producing a mutation, a neuropeptide called adrenolutin, or pink adrenaline. If you get enough adrenolutin, you will skits out. It is not desirable to get a hell of a lot of adrenolutin in your bloodstream. If you live in a society which is putting you under continuous stress, frightening you all the time, and saying we're going to set off atom bombs, hydrogen bombs, and whatnot, and you can get fired at any time, and with 2 weeks severance pay, and you're on your own. Good luck, Jack. Fuck you. We got ours. And things like that. And if you're taught that the proper form of entertainment is to turn and use a remote, I almost said turn a knob. I was suddenly 20 years back. Remember the days when you used to turn the knob on the television? That seems like it was before the flood, doesn't it? Back when dinosaurs roamed the earth. No, you punch the remote and you turn the channel and you get somebody else firing a gun at somebody. You flip to the next channel and there's a crazy woman with a knife attacking somebody. You flip to the next channel, there's more guys with guns shooting at one another. Or there are people trapped in a burning building. That's entertainment. And so you get more adrenaline rushes and a greater likelihood of adrenolutin, which keeps the schizophrenia rate nice and high and keeps the psychiatrist earning money. Well, that's one type of neuropeptide. Now, I may have given you a bad impression of neuropeptides, but that's only one type of neuropeptide. At the opposite extreme, there's endorphin. Endorphin kills pain. If you've ever tried magical healing or any type of faith healing or Christian Science or anything like that, the first symptom that it's working is that the pain is going away. The pain dwindles away to the vanishing point. That is because when magic or faith healing are working, the idea in the cortex and perhaps more subtle energies striking the body in other ways produce an effect in the hypothalamus, and the hypothalamus, when it's getting these benevolent messages, you are getting better, it starts releasing endorphins. And the endorphins start tranquilizing and sedating the pain, so the pain goes away. And of course, anybody who's in pain, when the pain starts going away, they think, hey, this is working. I'm feeling a lot better. So that boosts the effect, and you release even more endorphins. The endorphins have a second function. Well, they have many functions, but a second important function is that they stimulate and enhance the immunological system. Endorphins definitely have an effect that is like rejuvenating the immunological system. Our immunological system wears down as we get older. It wears down when we're under stress. If we've got a lot of adrenaline, the immunological system starts running down and we become more susceptible to diseases. Endorphins boost the immunological system and make us more resistant. So if you have a lot of endorphins wandering around in the form of, they follow the same paths as hormones. They not only run through the central nervous system, but they run through the blood too, and through the lymphic system. So if you've got a lot of endorphins wandering around, you are going to be feeling pretty high and happy. And if you keep the endorphins running, it seems you can cure yourself of practically anything. One of the endorphin masters of the Western world is Norman Cousins, who used to edit the Saturday Review and founded the Committee for a Sane Nuclear Policy. When Norman Cousins was adolescent, he got tuberculosis, and he was put in a TB sanitarium, which was common in those days. And he discovered there were two types of patients there, the optimists and the pessimists. The optimists got cured pretty quick and were released rather rapidly, thoroughly cured. The pessimists tended to remain in the sanitarium indefinitely, or perhaps for the rest of their lives or until they died. This is an unscientific observation by an untrained adolescent. But that was what Norman Cousins observed in the TB sanitarium, so he became an optimist. He decided the optimists get out of this place, and I want to get out of this place. So he developed a belief system that he was in charge of his own body and that he could resist the disease and fight back against it. And he was going to get released soon. Well, he did get released. He did recover from tuberculosis, and he led a healthy and happy life. Until he was in his 50s, he came back from a trip to Soviet Russia, and for some damn reason, he had acquired a rare African rheumatic disease which kills everybody who gets it. The disease paralyzes you a little bit at a time, and when you're totally paralyzed, it kills you. It's one of the most nefarious diseases known to medicine. It has a long name, which I don't remember. Cousins wrote a book about this, and it's been adapted for a TV show with Lou Grant, with Ed Asner playing Cousins. It's called Anatomy of a Disease. When the doctors told Cousins, you're done for, there's no hope, there's nothing in modern medicine that can cure you, you'll just get more and more paralyzed and then you'll die, he said, the hell with this. And he got the hell out of the hospital and he went to a hotel. And he hired a doctor who was a heretic and believed in Linus Pauling's theories about vitamin C. And he had this doctor come in once a day and shoot him with megadoses of vitamin C. Meanwhile, he looked at old comedies on his VCR. He looked at Laurel and Hardy, the complete works of Laurel and Hardy, all of the Marx Brothers, Buster Keaton, Charlie Chaplin, all the old classics of comedy. And he spent all day laughing and laughing and laughing and looking at one comedy after another and laughing, and then the doctor would come in the morning and give him another megadose of vitamin C, and he'd look at more of these crazy comedies and laugh and laugh and laugh. And in a couple of months, he was cured of this incurable disease. Some of the doctors at the hospital don't want to admit that even now. They claim he never had the disease in the first place and it was a misdiagnosis. You see, if you get better, you didn't have the disease, especially if you get better by a method they don't understand. Cousins wrote a book about that, which, as I say, became a TV show, and he did a lot of lecturing on the effect of the mind on the body. The effect of the so-called mind on the so-called body, we should really, more scientifically, we're talking about the effect of the cortex on the hypothalamus. The cortex is where you have your ideas and belief systems. The hypothalamus is where the neuropeptide system is regulated. One of the basic laws of neuroscience is what the believer believes, the prover proves. If you believe you're going to get better, the prover will set about proving that. The way that works is the beliefs in the cortex stimulate the hypothalamus to direct the neuropeptide system in such a way that you will get massive doses of endorphins and whatever other hormones we don't know about yet that are useful in building up the immunological system. A few years ago, Cousins had a heart attack. He made a recovery so rapid that it astounded everybody. You see, he's getting better at it. He's learning more and more how to do these things. Mary Baker Eddy had an equally remarkable career. A lot of people don't like Christian Science. Well, you don't have to like a system to learn the things in the system that are useful. It's very interesting to read a life of Mary Baker Eddy. She was sick all the time until she was about 40. She had one horrible condition after another. This may have something to do with the fact that she had 3 unhappy marriages, which is likely to produce tension and bad muscular armor, as Wilhelm Reich would say. Then Mary Baker Eddy discovered how to cure her illnesses, and she became so goddamn healthy that she lived to be 100, which was unique for somebody in the 19th century. And she wrote Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures, which is one of the most unintelligible books in the Western world, but it works. I knew a former Christian Scientist once who quit this church because they're so prudish about sexual things and so conservative in so many ways. And then she developed a major illness and cured herself with Christian Science. She just went back and used the techniques without rejoining the church. And she said something very interesting. She said, it only works if you're dumb enough to believe in it. Well, it's the same with the Course on Miracles. If you try to make head or tail out of that, you can't. A lot of it is gibberish. It sounds like it was dictated by Ramtha in collaboration with George Bush's speechwriters. But the system works if you can put aside your intellectual objections and not try to understand it and just work with the good energy that it's trying to transmit. And that's the way Science and Health works, too. All it is bypassing the skeptical centers in the cortex and letting the optimistic centers run free until the hypothalamus starts reacting to them and starts giving you the neuropeptides you need to recover from whatever affliction is striking you. How many people here have read Prometheus Rising? Damn near the whole group. Well, in Prometheus Rising, I talk about Leary's 8 circuits of the nervous system, and I changed the name slightly because I wanted to add on to Leary things from other fields of psychology and neurology that I thought would make the system clearer. The 5th circuit Leary calls the neurosomatic circuit where self-healing occurs. That should now I would call it the neuropeptide circuit, since it's obviously it works chiefly through the neuropeptide system. Now, anybody who wants to know more about the neuropeptide system, the best book on that field is The Psychobiology of Mind-Body Healing by Ernest Lawrence Rossi. The Psychobiology of Mind-Body Healing, Ernest Lawrence Rossi. He's a hypnotist, and he started wondering several years ago, why does it work? He knew that he could, with the proper type of suggestion, cure people of illnesses that medical doctors couldn't cure. But he wanted to know, how do I do it? He learned from Milton Erickson. When Milton Erickson didn't understand why it worked, Milton Erickson just understood that it did work. And Rossi has been wondering for years how it works, and gradually he accumulated enough knowledge of neurology and neurochemistry that in that book, The Psychobiology of Mind-Body Healing, he gives you a very clear scientific point-by-point breakdown of how the neuropeptide system does work through the hypothalamus. And another very good book on this area is Megabrain by Michael Hutchinson. Megabrain by Michael Hutchinson. I'm giving a seminar with Michael Hutchinson about a month from now in New York, where we're going to demonstrate a lot of these machines that stimulate the neuropeptide system. In a short while, Joe Rothenberg will be showing you a few of those machines. One of them is called the NeuroPep, and the reason it's got that name is that I named it. The inventor asked me to write some advertising for it, and in the course of writing the advertising, I renamed the machine. He liked my name. His original name for it was the Astrolite, but he liked the name NeuroPep, and that's the name it's being sold under. The NeuroPep uses goggles and earphones and a tape that controls the frequency of the light and the frequency of the sound. And the tape carries you from the beta, which is the normal frequency of the brain in waking activity, outward directed activity mediated through the sympathetic nervous system. This is the kind of activity we engage in most of the time when we're trying to solve problems, relate with others, impose ourselves upon the environment, avoid the environment going over us like a steamroller, and generally being an aggressive, successful mammal. The machine moves you down from that to alpha. Alpha is characteristic of a shift from sympathetic functioning to parasympathetic, or a mixture of sympathetic and parasympathetic. Parasympathetic turns the attention inward. Alpha also moves you slightly from the left hemisphere domination to equal domination between the left and right hemispheres. Then it moves you down to theta, in which you collapse totally into the parasympathetic nervous system. Your attention is entirely turned inward, and the right brain is completely dominant, and the left brain is out to lunch for a while, which turns out to be a splendidly ecstatic experience, because we overuse the left side of the brain. I know you've all heard this a lot since the 1960s, but it needs to be repeated in this context. We overuse the left hemisphere because we got a peculiarly aggressive and competitive society full of unusual stresses unique in evolutionary history. We're continually defending ourselves against real and imaginary attacks and possible threats and stresses of all sorts, so we're constantly trying to cope. Coping means using the left hemisphere to figure out what the hell is coming at me next and how can I protect myself from it. And it is the overuse of the left hemisphere that leads to the overproduction of adrenaline and the tendency to produce adrenolutin and wig out, or adrenochrome, which is another mutation of adrenaline, which is equally bad for you. So when the left hemisphere conks out briefly and you are controlled by the right hemisphere, you achieve a tremendous relaxation, a great sense of ecstasy, and you're no longer directed entirely to competition and self-protection. You're able to go with the flow, as they say in all the Oriental systems. Then the neuropep moves you down to delta. Delta is where out-of-body experiences occur and where people are very likely to report precognition or ESP. Delta is the most forbidden range. It's very dangerous to report in scientific literature that you've had delta-level experiences because psychop will claim you're a nut. And most scientists who are engaged in research in this area sort of write in code when they're writing about delta. They say there was an appearance of paranormal experience on the part of the subjects. They won't say the subjects had paranormal experiences because then psychop would be all over them like ugly on an ape. The Endomax, which was the one I pointed to a few minutes ago, the Endomax works on a different principle than the neuropep. The Endomax just attaches to the mastoids, the bones behind the ear, and you get a variety of tapes. Each tape gives you a different frequency. I'll show you what I mean. Actually, I forgot my mic. Actually, out-of-body experiences usually happen at 4 hertz. When you get down below 4 hertz, you don't have out-of-body experiences. What you're likely to have is normal dreams or psychedelic experiences. That's what Leary calls the meta-programming circuit. And I'm just curious. I've done a lot of research with this gizmo in the last year. To what extent is my voice slowing down? Do people notice something happening? By and large, I'm doing pretty well. You get the best healing effect if you don't try to fight it by giving a lecture. If you just sit down, close your eyes, and really go with that low frequency. But that's only one of the frequencies you get with the Endomax. Anything you do to assist the machine helps. It's very good to do the Golden Dawn middle pillar exercise while you're using the machine. Let the light flow up and down your body. Let the light flow up through your body to a sphere above your head and then come down in an egg shape around your body. Any type, or you can just use a simple mantra. like Kuwai's famous, every day in every way I am getting healthier and healthier. Every day in every way I am getting healthier and healthier. You can use all sorts of gimmicks to assist the machine and help direct the effect. There's an endorphin tape that you can get with this, and the endorphins are tremendous because they not only boost the immunological system, which I was talking about earlier, they also act as neurotransmitters, which means they run around the brain looking for places they can make new bonds. Every time you get new bonds in your brain, that's new neural circuits. That means you're going to have new perceptions and new ideas. In other words, endorphins are mild, natural psychedelics. So mild that you hardly know, you don't think you're tripping or anything like that. But suddenly, a few hours after you've used the machine, you get a wild new idea, or you suddenly notice, hey, I haven't been noticing colors like this since the last time I smoked grass. And so endorphins are both neurotransmitters and hormones. There's a stimulant tape that comes with this, which is very interesting. Somebody told me he only uses the stimulant tape. We all have our favorite brain. Everybody is going to develop their own favorite brain circuits in the next 20 years, I guess. The stimulant tape is widely used in England currently by doctors treating people going through cocaine withdrawal. It seems when you learn how to use the stimulant tape, you can turn on that circuit at will and you don't need cocaine anymore to get into the cocaine state. Whenever I talk about that, everybody wants to try the stimulant tape. I know after this is over, when Joe starts his demonstration, everybody's going to line up and say, where's the stimulant tape? Where's the stimulant tape? There's an anti-jet lag tape, which I have tried several times, and the frequency on that tape really seems to get rid of most of the symptoms of jet lag. I flew from Los Angeles to Berlin, which is quite a flight. 11 hours. It's damn close to halfway around the world. And I used the anti-jet lag tape twice, the day I landed and the next day, and I didn't have any symptoms of jet lag whatsoever. I used it when I came back from Berlin to Los Angeles with the same good results. The 7.5 hertz gets you into deep meditation without all the sweat and agony of learning how to do deep meditation. I spent years and years learning how to do deep meditation as distinct from shallow meditation. The difference between shallow meditation and deep meditation is when you reach deep meditation, you think, hey, I'm finally doing it. I've shut off the verbal circuit. And then you think, hey, who the hell is that talking in here? Then you're out of deep meditation again, and you got to start all over. Yeah. These back machines, and it's so much inspired that I coined the word motion. That's G-A-D. Technology, program up everything. I know the way it will be like. There are so many things you can do with these machines. There's such a variety of machines that I'm much more enthusiastic than I was. The expression, the head revolution. The first experience I had with one of the generation brain tuners was with Mike Hercules' Pulse Star. The Pulse Star attaches to 4 parts of the skull, 2 in the front and 2 in the back. It attaches to the mastoids and 2 parts of the temple. And it stimulates equally the front brain, which is the hominid cortical intellectual circuits, and the back brain, the old mammalian reptile circuit, and both the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere. And the Pulse Star is a pretty powerful trip. The strongest of all these brain machines. And after I tried a few trips on the Pulse Star, Mike Hercules said, do you want an out-of-body experience? And I said, yeah, because I've been having out-of-body experience since 1962, and I've never been sure exactly what's going on in out-of-body experiences. But that would get me into the philosophy of Zen, and the monk who pondered for years on the riddle, who is the master who makes the grass green? And one day he burst from his cell with a hell of a yell, like the monk from Siberia in the famous limerick. Is that limerick so old that nobody knows it anymore? There once was a monk from Siberia whose existence grew drearier and drearier till he burst from his cell with a hell of a yell and eloped with the Mother Superior. Well, this monk burst from his cell with a hell of a yell and ran to the master and said, I've got it, that rock there is inside my head. And the Roshi said, you must point reach Satori. Everything you see is inside your head, but your head is inside the universe. Since you see the universe must be inside your head. So the only way out of this paradox is that you've got two heads. There's the head which contains the universe. Well, right now, if you think about the universe, you got the universe inside your head, right? If you can't think about the universe right now, just think about this room. You can see the whole room, right? So the room is inside your head. The room that you see is inside your head. And yet your head is inside the room. Now, the only way that's possible is if you got two heads, the head that contains the room and the head that's inside the room. That's right, there are two heads and two rooms. And this doesn't make any sense whatsoever until you understand the logic of strange loops, and then you're able to understand Zen koans. And the easier way is to use these machines. And so I don't think the body experience is the correct name for the experience. I don't think consciousness is inside the body in the first place. The brain is inside the body, but the brain is just a receiver of consciousness. Thinking you are inside your body is like thinking Johnny Carson is inside the television set. Johnny Carson is a non-local phenomenon, tuned in by many, many television sets. The real Johnny Carson lives in another world entirely, known as Hollywood, which very rarely intersects with this continuum at all. The Johnny Carson that you see on your television is a non-local signal sent by head. Is thinking that Carson is inside the television set. Consciousness is a non-local signal from an alternative reality, the realm of the hidden variables, as David Bohm says. Or as Lao Tzu said, the greatest is within the smallest. Now, if that's perfectly clear, I said, yeah, I'd like an out-of-body experience because I've been wondering about this for years. Every time I go out of my body, I wonder, where am I? It took me a long time to figure out finally that the universe is inside my head, but that's not my empirical head, it's my conceptual head. And my empirical head is inside the universe. My conceptual head contains the universe. And so Mike turned the pulse dot to 4 hertz, which is the frequency that Robert Monroe discovered produces out-of-body experience. And I went out of Mike's laboratory in Boulder, where you can't find drug-free urine for 100 miles, and over the Rocky Mountains, a little crooked street called the Haggard, where I was living at the time, and I found my house, and I went in and looked at my wife sitting on the couch reading, and I thought, I don't want to do anything to scare her. And so I just backed out quietly and wandered around Hoth for a while and visited the rhododendron gardens and went back studying the geography of Iceland and going over the North Pole and examining Canada carefully and finding the Rocky Mountains and getting my way back to Boulder and finding the building and the room. And there I was sitting there with the pulse star on again. And that seemed to take about a half hour for the whole journey. And then Mike showed me the electroencephalogram, the EEG, on the experience, and it actually only took 15 seconds. But what was interesting is, although my brain was at 4 hertz when the experience started, during that 15 second, my brain was at 0 hertz. I had no brain wave at all. No beta, no alpha, no theta, no delta, no nothing. Any doctor looking at that EEG would say the patient died at this point. And then when it started, he'd say, well, that's what we call clinical death. He was really only clinically dead. Now he came back to life. Now people who have this kind of experience on the operating level, clinical death, generally have an out-of-body experience. Evidently, they're going to 4 hertz and then to 0 hertz. And now we can duplicate that. You don't have to be in an automobile accident. All you got to do is get one of the second-generation pulse stars that has 4 hertz on it, or get the hemisync from Robert Monroe, which only has 4 hertz. Monroe is concerned with out-of-body experiences, not with the other aspects of this technology. Another interesting gizmo is the Grain Potentializer. That's a couch sort of gizmo. We don't have a word for it, so you got to grope around and say what it's like. It's kind of like an operating table, except it's comfortable as a couch. And it's set between 2 electromagnetic poles, and it rotates in a pattern like an infinity sign, very gently. While you're rotating in there on the earphones, you listen to music at the low frequencies between alpha and theta. And for some reason, Dr. Grain explained the theory to me, and I like head or tail out of it. I've spoken to a lot of people to whom Dr. Grain has explained his theory. Earphones, you're listening to music at one of the low frequencies between alpha and theta. And for some reason, Dr. Grain explained the whole theory to me, and I couldn't make head or tail out of it. I've spoken to a lot of people to whom Dr. Grain has explained his theory, and none of them have been able to understand it either. But whatever one thinks of the theory, the Grain Potentializer has an absolutely unique effect. After an hour on it, you're stoned. You get off the Grain Potentializer and you walk around saying, hey, I haven't been this stoned since the very first time I tried hash. It's never been this good since the first time on hash. This is almost like acid. Oh my God, wow. And after about 3 hours, you notice that you got as much energy as if you were on cocaine, and you're getting one idea after another. And about a day later, you notice that you're still full of energy, you're still having new ideas, and you feel you have had a definite boost to the creativity center of the brain. It seems that this produces a hell of a lot of endorphins, and the endorphins are running all over the brain, making new connections, so you're having new perceptions and new ideas continually. And the effect seems to last for about a day and a half. Now, Grain claims he's kept careful records on all of the subjects on the Grain Potentializer for several years now, and he can prove there's a 20% increase in IQ if you have 10 sessions on the Grain Potentializer. I don't know how careful his records are, and I don't vouch for that. That's just one of his claims. What I do know is my experience on the Grain Potentializer twice have been so thrilling that I intend to go through the whole 10 sessions and see if I can raise my IQ 20 points. Because the older I get, the more I realize I'm a cosmic schmuck, and I'd like to become a little less schmucky before I reach 60, so I'm going back on the Grain Potentializer. Now, what's really fascinating about this technology to me is not what we've got already, but the potentials that are right around the corner, what's going to be happening next, the next wave of the head revolution. There's a very sophisticated biofeedback mechanism known as the mind mirror, and not to be confused with Timothy Leary's computer game Mind Mirror. These are two things both called Mind Mirror, but they're not the same. The Mind Mirror biofeedback machine is the most sophisticated biofeedback machine in the world today, I think. It gives you a reading of both hemispheres of the brain continually, how much beta, how much alpha, how much theta, and how much delta you got on each side of your brain. And you have an ideal pattern, which she calls Anna Wise, the one who teaches the Mind Mirror in this country. It was invented by a Scotch doctor who taught her over in England. Anna Wise is the only one in this country who's teaching Mind Mirror currently. You're given this pattern, which she got from a whole bunch of Zen masters. This is the typical Zen Master Pattern. And it's very symmetrical. It looks a little bit like a pear upside down. And you can look at that pattern and look at your own pattern on the mind mirror, and you try every meditative technique you know, every type of relaxation, everything you know, and keep trying to approximate to the Zen Master's pattern. And it's a lot of fun. I come out very close to the Zen Master's pattern, except with a few funny dents. She calls that disorganized awakened brain. And she says that's characteristic of artists. So now we know the difference between an artist and a Zen master. A Zen master has an awakened brain, and an artist has a disorganized awakened brain. The obvious next step is not just looking at the Zen pattern and trying to duplicate it, but getting a computer to duplicate that pattern and attach it to one of these machines and just program the computer so the machine will give you exactly that much alpha, that much beta, that much delta, and so on each side of the brain. You just keyboard in what you want, and the machine will put you exactly in that mental state. And that can't be more than about 5 years away, since I'm thinking about it now. There are a lot of other people thinking about it. And it's not just the Zen pattern. You can have any pattern you want. Get John Lilly before he dies, for God's sake. Get John Lilly to sit down by the mind mirror. We get the John Lilly pattern and then learn how to program that into your head, and you can have a head just like John Lilly. Get Tim Leary. Tim is arranging to have his head frozen when he dies, you know. Before Tim's head is frozen, we need to get a complete readout on that, and then you just program the computer properly and you have Tim Leary's head. Einstein is dead, unfortunately, but there are a lot of other choices around. I'd like to have David Bohm's brain pattern. You can change your head every week. Now let's see, which head shall I wear this week? Shall I be Tim Leary this week, or shall I be David Bohm? Maybe David Bowie instead of David Bohm. You got to collect the brain patterns of the most interesting people on the planet and just program them directly into your brain. And all of these fields of neuroscience feed back into one another. When I was thinking it's too bad Einstein was dead, I remembered, hey, Einstein's brain has been preserved. It's at a university in New York. I forget, with Mount Sinai Medical School, I think. And someday somebody is going to get a cell out of Einstein's brain. Probably it'll be done above board and legal. Somebody will make an application, get a grant from the National Science Foundation, and so on. But I prefer to think it'll be some guy sneaking in at night with a hunchbacked assistant. I've got a weakness for old Hollywood cliches, you see. Anyway, somebody's going to get a cell of Einstein's brain, which won't damage the brain, by the way. The brain is not cryonically preserved, unfortunately, but taking one cell out doesn't make that much difference. You got so bloody many cells there. 100 billion is the latest estimate. It keeps going up every time I buy a new book on neurology. They find new kinds of cells that they weren't counting before. Take one cell out of Einstein's brain and run it through the laboratory, and you get Einstein DNA, as distinct from all other human DNA, the distinct combination of strands that made Einstein's DNA. And then you get out the Einstein RNA. And then you put them together in a pill. And then you go out to the colleges before examination time and you look for the physics students. Hey man, you want a pill that has Einstein's RNA and his DNA both in it? Don't pay attention to those guys over there who only have Einstein's RNA. We got both in one pill, and we're selling it for the ridiculously low price of $5 a hit. And I can see that coming. I wish it could be done legally and above board and with scientific freedom. But considering the state of the world and having read Neuromancer, I imagine a great deal of this will be underworld activity, just like the drug revolution has unfortunately turned out to be. But I look forward to not only having in the next 5 to 10 years machines in which I can program my brain to the pattern of anybody I admire, but also pills available in which I can have the RNA, DNA of anybody I admire. And that's just what I can see in the next 5 to 10 years. The step after that is beyond my conceptualizing at this point. I find in future projections I get about as far as the year 2012, which is where, according to Jose Delgado, everything goes jackpot anyway. I get about as far as 2012, and then the breakthroughs beyond that I just can't imagine. They're so staggering what's going to happen between now and 2012, if we don't pollute ourselves to death first and with all the other ifs. If we survive our stupidities, the breakthroughs in brain science that are coming up are going to be absolutely staggering. It seems to me that it will be possible to abolish stupidity. which is probably an even greater step forward than abolishing starvation, although on humanitarian grounds, I think we should abolish starvation first. That's an urgent problem. Stupidity is a chronic problem. But the main trouble with trying to cure stupidity is that the stupid don't know they're stupid. Generally, they refuse to admit they're stupid, and any suggestion that they are stupid and they need a cure for it encounters intense resistance on their part, just like the most neurotic people refuse to go to psychotherapy. The most stupid people refuse to do anything to improve their brains. But LSD, among other things, has shown us the answer to that. LSD didn't reach everybody, but it reached a large part of the population, and it's still circulating despite the government and the reign of terror and so on. What we need for an intelligence-raising compound is that it's got to be hedonic. It's got to give people a lot of fun. And then the stupid will come for it. They won't say, I'm taking this to raise my intelligence. They say, I'm taking this to have a great time. What we need is a pill that raises intelligence and is also an aphrodisiac. Then everybody will be taking it. Jimmy Swaggart will be taking it, coming on television and denouncing it at the same time. George Bush will be taking it and saying, I call on the death penalty for all distributors. Everybody will be taking it. And I think that's quite conceivable in the next 15 years, that kind of pill. And it'll spread like wildfire across the world. Everybody will want the pill, and none of them will worry about the fact that they're getting smarter, because as they get smarter, they'll worry less and less about getting smarter, and it won't seem like such a horrible calamity. They'll think, hey, it's fun being smart. When can I get the pill that makes me even smarter? And if there is no such pill, well, let's try the latest machine, see what that does for me. There's no game in town compared to the head revolution, having fun and profit with the human brain. The Judeo-Christian culture has been training us for 2,000 to 3,000 years to use the brain for misery and masochism. Learning how to use the brain for fun and profit is the greatest adventure in the world, and all the laws passed by all the idiotic politicians from here to Moscow aren't going to stop it. And right now, all of these machines are legal. And I guess that's about all I've got to say today. I think I deserve a great round of applause for doing this with sore eyes and the sniffles.